You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
I'm Stephen Cabral, and I'm excited to get started with today's topic. And that's why you know by now, if you've been listening to the Cabral Concept, that we do not just talk about weight loss in terms of you need to eat less and you need to exercise more. And every single Weight Loss Wednesday is really never about losing weight. It's not. You probably figured that out by now. It has more to do with getting your body healthy. And that's why this show, this Weight Loss Wednesday, is really for everyone. And here's why. All of us can gain weight, gain body fat because of becoming imbalanced. That's really what it's all about. And so what we have to do is we have to look at what are the causes of us to have that lowered metabolism. Because again, we all know that it can't simply be about eating less and exercising more. If that were the case, most people would have already reached their goal by now, and they wouldn't have those friends that can basically eat anything they want, not exercise, and not gain weight, right? So if it was really about exercising and eating less, then those people should lose even more weight, or you, by doing the same thing, following the same plan as another friend, should have lost that weight as well and be in the same type of shape. It doesn't work that way. It has to do with your metabolism. Everything to do with really getting in great shape, losing weight, and keeping it off, right? Because some people, they literally just look at a cheeseburger and gain weight while others don't. So again, the real issue is about metabolism, it's about hormones, and it's never about just calories alone. It's not. Can you eat too many calories and gain weight? Absolutely, without a doubt. Even a Vata body type, even ectomorph can gain weight as well. It's just harder for them because their genotype, their genetics, their dosha, their body type, whatever you want to call it, predisposes them to have a higher sympathetic nervous system, or I should just say a higher internal metabolism, which keeps them running at a much faster level. There's been a lot of great research, a lot of great studies as well, showing that they're actually a very good sugar oxidizer. They're people that are good at burning sugar versus body fat. Now, I know that, again, that doesn't make any sense, but it will when you look at it from the perspective is they basically channel that body fat to be burned up as a fast fuel source, since they are always in that go mode, where a slow oxidizer, or someone that just oxidizes body fat, I should say, will convert sugar, will convert carbohydrates to a much greater degree to turn into body fat, which is why some people see great results when they take their nutrition down to essentially, as they call it, like leans and greens, right? Lean proteins, a lot of vegetables, and some good fat. Whereas the ectomorph, the Vata body type, that would basically just destroy their endocrine system or their hormones, and they need more of the carbohydrates, which is their preferred fuel source. We see this all around us in nature. We see this in all types of humans. There is no one diet for every human being. What I want to talk about today is how your thyroid is affected by your adrenal gland, and therefore can slow, causing you to gain weight. So in other words, it's how your adrenals actually are the main driver affecting your thyroid. That's whenever you have low thyroid, that hypothyroidism, you want to look to your adrenal glands first. And the reason is this: it is the dominance of the HPA axis, called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, that dictates a lot of how your thyroid is going to function. I'm going to explain all of that today. I'm going to do it from a non-textbook perspective as best as I can. I'll use a couple big words, but I'll always try to just, talk normally, right? Because I hate when I've listened to podcasts before and they're always just trying to use all sorts of different medical terms. Sounds like a lot of times they don't even understand them themselves. And what they're doing is they're not really helping anyone. They're using big words and saying all sorts of different things to maybe make themselves, sound smart or sound good, whatever it might be. My goal is education only. And I don't think anyone is getting the service by explaining it through a complex measure. Like for myself, if someone's trying to explain music or an instrument, or they're trying to explain investing or accounting, things that I don't know anything about, right? They can't use the same vernacular that they would learn in school. They need to take it down a level for me and just say, what would just a total beginner need to know and talk with them in that perspective. Now, I know many of you listening are well above beginner, but how I like to explain it is from that level. It also helps me really get clear on my ability to really get that out to people as well and try to fine tune that message. So let's get into today's show. I really think that it will not disappoint and it'll really open up your eyes into just transforming your body, but also your health. So what happens is when our body gets a signal of stress, it can be endogenous, that means created in our body through candida, bacterial overgrowth, inflammation, toxins, plastics, you name it, any one of those things. That's called endogenous. I should say that. Endogenous would be our own hormones and our own stress in our body. Exogenous would be then the plastics and other stuff coming in, as well as also, though, work, life, relationships, that type of stress, okay? Our body sees it as stress. And what happens is this little compartment of our brain called the hypothalamus starts to produce something called corticotropic releasing hormone, sometimes called corticotropin releasing hormone. We're just going to refer to it as CRH. When CRH is released, it then signals to the pituitary gland, another part of our brain, to produce something called ACTH, adrenocorticotropic releasing hormone, or just adrenocorticotropic hormone. Now, what happens here is this then signals to the adrenal glands to start to produce. First, we get a wave of norepinephrine or adrenaline. And then second, as we get these positive and negative feedbacks to the body, meaning we need to respond to stress, we produce something called cortisol, which is what more people are familiar with. It's also called glucocorticoids. So that is how our body responds to stress. A whole cascade event takes place, meaning like aldosterone levels start to change, blood pressure will increase, sodium compartments will change within the body as well. Again, these things help with blood pressure. These help with the fight or flight based response. What you need to know is that the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, called the HPA axis, are what work and get our body alert in terms of stress, meaning like we can either then run and fight or we can run away, the flight-based mode, right? Or in other cases, freeze. And the freeze might be more like anxiety, panic attacks, all of those specific things as well. So the adrenals function in a very simple, systematic way that took me a decade really to fine-tune and figure out because of my own adrenal-based issues, when I was 17, 18 years old. And again, you can't repair that just with some licorice root and DHEA. And again, like I'm not coming down on any practitioners that are doing that. It's a start. However, you're only working on surface level. What you're saying is DHEA, okay, well, the body's already producing a lot of cortisol. We're going to try to bring some THEA over to try to balance the stress hormone pathway. And then licorice root is going to extend the half-life of cortisol. Okay, great. But what do we do to control the HPA axis, which is the real issue in the first place? All right, I'm turning this into an adrenal-based show. I said that I wouldn't do that. I'll talk about the adrenals on a future show. But that is basically the way the adrenal glands are only affected through the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Now, eventually they'll start to fail. I'll talk about that later. But stress, that's the initial trigger, right? Inside stress is basically gut-based inflammation, food sensitivities that you're sensitive to. Again, yeast, candida, bacterial overgrowth, any one of those things, viruses, all of those things can affect the body and cause stress. Now, what happens though, interesting thing is here, once the adrenal glands become affected, a very specific and straightforward thing happens as well. And what happens here is that the body actually begins to slow the metabolism. Why would it do that? Well, it does that for a very specific reason. Your body's in the fight or flight based mode, the sympathetic nervous system based mode, the catabolic mode, whatever you want to call it. It believes it is either in famine, it's drought, it's war, it's fighting, it's whatever it might be. And so we slow that metabolic rate. Well, what happens there? Many things happen within the body, but one of them that we're talking about today is weight gain, right? Is the putting on of body fat, storing it specifically around the midsection, the love handles and the weight around the belly. So none of us want that, right? That is not the ideal look for any single one of us and not the ideal feeling, because that in and of itself also starts to increase estrogen. Estrogen then has all sorts of different manifestations, none of them in a positive manner once you get above a certain threshold. So it can cause cancer in both really men and women and causes all sorts of other inflammatory based issues. So what happens though is when the body gets stressed, the adrenals start to turn on full blast. The pituitary gland, because your hypothalamus and your pituitary gland, remember, they don't just control it's basically called your thermostat. It doesn't just control the adrenals, it also controls the thyroid, and that's called the HPT axis, okay? So what happens here is your body actually starts to get inhibited at the thyroid stimulating hormone, so the TSH. And when that happens, we're not able to convert as much thyroid hormone to T4. But not only that, what happens is when we start to produce a greater amount of glucocorticoids, which is just cortisol, which is just stress, right? It's just stress. When we produce more of that stress hormone, we start to not only block T4 from becoming the real active form of T3 inside the cells. Like, that's what we need. That's the juice. People put it around 70 to 80% of the active thyroid is that T3. But it can also convert usable, like real legitimate T3 that your body can use to the inactive form, which is called reverse T3. And that's why if you've seen my thyroid test online, again, you can just go to stephencabral.com/store. We've had so many people run that, right? You can run the thyroid test, or you can run the full-blown weight loss test, which will give you everything. It gives you blood sugar. It gives you cortisol. I mean, it's an amazing test. It's easily the most advanced test out there in terms of hormones. Insulin, blood sugar, it even runs TPO for autoimmune-based issues with thyroid. Phenomenal. So what happens, though, is this, is you just heard me talk about that. It is the adrenal glands and the cascade effect within the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, that starts to block thyroid function. And it does that. It basically just slows thyroid function. It slows it through the stress feedback loop of saying, oh, our body's stressed, we're under attack, and we're going to lower thyroid as well, because that will also lower metabolism. So again, all of these things are natural mechanisms within the body. I mean, I could go on and on about thyroid and just talk about like other things called the thyroid binding globulin and other mechanisms which also kind of soak up the T4 inside the body so that it can't be used inside of your cells by active T3. There are so many processes that happen within the body, but I don't want to make it too complicated. I feel like I've already done that. So I'm going to take a step back. So what you want to think about is this. I know there's a lot of people with low thyroid. And again, if you have your TSH measures, which is kind of like the basic thing that a lot of doctors will run, is you'll look at it and you'll see the range is anywhere from like 0.5 to 5, right? Well, from a functional medicine perspective, you really want it from 0.5 to about 2 or 2.5. Ideally, you're in the low ones, like 1.15, 1.5, right around there. That's basically perfect functioning thyroid or TSH. When you start to see that TSH go high, like 3, 4, 5, or, again, I've seen them 30 and above, that means that your body is trying to create more thyroid hormone because you're not getting enough in T4 and T3, right? So that's when you have to look much, much deeper. And a simple TSH is not going to get you there. Again, even above a 2.5, your thyroid's actually starting to become a little bit lowered. So yes, that will absolutely affect your body's ability to lose weight. It will, because it slows your metabolism. And that's why I try to tell people it's not fair that we have so many so-called gurus out there just saying you need to really lower your calories or you can't eat carbohydrates ever. Because that also, by the way, not eating any carbohydrates lowers your metabolism, typically lowers your thyroid as well. You're in a stress-based state. You just took away all of your body's sugar, like all of the body's carbohydrates, which is would prefer to use as fuel. Can we burn things like, our own liver glycogen? Can we burn things like ketones? Yes. It's just not the preferred fuel source, so it can cause stress in the body as well. Not everyone's equipped for that. Certainly not in this, crazy day and age where we have stress from our kids, our relationships, our work, our commutes, all of the 88 to 100,000 plus man-made chemicals now in the environment, right? We have stress everywhere we look. Now we're going to eliminate a whole food group, meaning like a whole macronutrient group called carbohydrates. To me, doesn't make a lot of sense. What you need to do is go deeper and deeper and deeper and look at these root cause-based issues. So what I would say is, like, how do we escape all of this now, right? Because I can't just, bring up the problem for you and then not try to help you rewind and go back. So the essential thing is this, and I always work on this in my practice. I tell people this, whether, again, we're talking by phone, we're talking in the office, or I'm just, create a podcast like this or write an article, speaking, whatever it might be, is first we need to work on what can we do to reduce our level of stress from all facets of life, right? From family, from outside relationships, to work, to commute, whatever it might be. And I'm guaranteeing you, I understand life gets in the way. You're not going to be able to reduce all of those. What I'm asking you to do is reduce the ones that you can so that your body has a little bit more get up and go to deal with the ones that it has to deal with. And then I want you to work on your response to stress, right? So your response to that commute. If you listen to one of my previous podcasts, I talked about starting your day off right. And that was if you leave 20 minutes earlier for that commute, I'm guaranteeing you it's going to be less stressful. You have 20 more minutes to listen to the radio, listen to podcasts, listen to your favorite music, whatever it might be, right? So that's going to be far less stressful. You're getting to work a little earlier. That's okay, right? That's okay. Good. You get in there earlier, you look good, and you get started on your work a little bit earlier, or you can just hang out. You can look at ESPN or read up on how great the Patriots were in the Super Bowl. Any of those amazing things, right? So you want to start to reduce those stressors. But then after that, I'm not going to say that working on your adrenals and your thyroid is not optimal and it isn't what you should do, because you should, right? You should. So what you want to do is give your adrenals, but give the whole HPA axis what it needs. Look towards the ashwagandha, the rhodiola, maybe something like maca, but there's a lot more before that, right? Because usually we need phosphatidylserine. We need things that are going to just calm down the body. That's what we need. We don't need things that often ramp it up. That doesn't make a lot of sense, because we got here in the first place by being overstressed. We need to calm our bodies down, let it rest, let it repair, and then give it a good, full activated multivitamin. So you make sure you get all your zinc and all of those things in there, which are crucial, or use the all-in-one part of the daily nutritional support that we talk about. Use some greens. Use things that are just loaded with minerals that your body's going to love and that it's going to use to build back up your body. And then in terms of thyroid, selenium is an absolute must. Iodine is typically an absolute must. Again, you just need to work on what your body needs to replenish. And how do you do that? Well, you can run an adrenal stress test, adrenal cortisol test. It's a simple saliva test. It's 4 tubes during the day. Right when you wake up, you take that to look at your cortisol. That should be at its peak. Then it comes down right before lunch. Take it then. Mid-afternoon, take it then. And then right before bed. Great for people who can't sleep at night, who are tired during the day. We call them tired and wired. They are exhausted all day, and then all of a sudden they get a second wind at night. Not ideal, not good. And then again, you could test your thyroid as well. So the weight maintenance test literally tests both adrenal and thyroid. Or if you're like, you know what, I really just want to look at my adrenals. I want to see how they're affecting my thyroid, because I know if I fix up my adrenals, then I can fix my thyroid as well. You could do that too. And again, these are simple tests. You're going to run some saliva. You're going to literally spit into a tube. It's like that easy. That's one of the, I shouldn't say it's one of, it is the first functional medicine test I ever ran about 20 years ago. And it started me on my path to getting well again. Amazing. Very, very happy to that doctor to this day, who's still practicing, believe it or not, but also who introduced me to this, because it just really revolutionized my thinking. Again, I moved at a snail's pace, but it got me going, and then I understood there's so much deeper that we have to look at. And the thyroid is a simple blood poke of the finger, as well as just some saliva, and one of them has a little urine as well. So again, these are simple tests. You can do them right at home. If you can afford it, my highest recommendation is to run a lab. If you get more data on yourself, you simply know your starting point, right? So I knew my starting point was just wiped out. Adrenals were wiped out. So I knew my process of rebuilding was going to take some time, and that kind of let me off the hook. I just said to myself, okay, well, I don't have to plan on getting better tomorrow. I'm going to rebuild my body from the ground up, and that's what I did. For the thyroid, okay, you got to replenish with what your body needs. You got to work on the adrenals as well, and then you're going to get there as well. Now, after these things are done, guess what? You automatically lose weight. You automatically achieve your ideal body. Remember, a healthy body can't be overweight. It can't. A healthy body's not going to gain weight. You're going to eat well. You're going to give your body what it needs, and you're going to take out what it doesn't need. That's the beauty of all of these things. So thank you for letting me really explain this topic today. I love talking about functional medicine. That's what we just spoke about. So if you're ever wondering, like, what's Ayurvedic medicine, what's orthomolecular medicine, what's functional medicine, what we just spoke about is advanced functional medicine that, unfortunately, it's not taught in school. Most physicians know nothing about it, and it's just too bad. They study, believe me, everyone studies the HPA axis, HPT axis, but not like this, not how it affects things at a deeper endocrine level, a deeper hormone level. So again, thank you for tuning in to another Cabral Concept, and I look forward to speaking with you again tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only 2 ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.